Okay, mic check. Okay, that's working. Okay, so the YouTube live thing is working now. I believe I'm live, although there's nobody there at the moment, but I'm sure they'll join us shortly. Oh, we already got a person. Okay, cool. All right, we'll have to use this instead. If you're at home, sorry for the delay. We are having technical problems again, unfortunately. Okay, for those of you that came in late, there's a new bathroom protocol, and this is for the people at home too, just so you know what to do when you get here. If you look at the menu at the top here, you're going to be using this online in course environment basically the entire time that you're here, so I'll try to put everything in there. You'll notice if you click the little more button, there's a bathroom break button. If you have to go to the bathroom, you just open that form, you type in your name, and the bathroom you're going to, you can just say music hall, or I guess for the girls' bathroom, it's this hall, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. So you just say science hall, and then you submit it, and then just let me know. Just say, I got to go to the bathroom, and then you go, okay? You don't have to ask or anything. Like, if you have to go to the bathroom, that's fine. I recommend that you do it before the break, just so that you don't get into a huge line up there, because that's not great. And if you've seen somebody go, just wait till they get back before you go. It's not a huge deal. So I wanted to mention that. Did people get a chance to finish the check-in survey? Do you guys know what I mean? Like the day one course survey, where you go through and you like tell me your name and your interests. And I got it from a few students. Let me check.
I did some things.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Let's see. I have it from 8 students. Okay, cool.
Where is it?
Where is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're looking for the assignment, it's in content. Okay, all the assignments are going to be somewhere in there, or you can go to the assignments tab. You can hit assignments. That'll show you all of the assignments that and their due dates. So that's a way to just find assignments. But if you look in course content, there's the day one stuff right here. And then if you go through all the stuff from day one, you'll see that student parent information survey is one of the assignments. If you open that up, it'll tell you what to do. It's a Google form that you complete with your parents. Like I said, some people in here still need to complete it. Do I need to go through and like name names, or are you guys good with that? You know you haven't done it. If you haven't done it, please do it. Okay? I actually needed to have it done for today, but yes. Yeah, for sure.
I did it. I just don't know if I entered it properly.
You can just check. Then just check to see if it's been submitted. Yeah. See your name there?
Yeah.
Is there a date beside it?
Yeah.
Then you submitted it, and you're done. What's that? Sorry. No.
More.
Oh, one more. Oh, sorry.
If there's no date beside you didn't do it, right?
There we go.
Yeah. That's right. It means you didn't turn it in. You do have to turn it in once you're completed as well. This is just so that I know that you're done. So I have it from 8 students. You may have done it and forgot to turn it in. If that's the case, just turn it in so I know. I mistakenly in the form mentioned that your parents had to sign the course outline. That's a mistake. That's from last year. They don't have to physically sign it. They just need to check the little box that says that they've read it, because we're not collecting forms anymore. So that's good enough. We'll call that a signature. Okay, so if your parents check the little box on the survey, I call that they signed it. I don't really have any other choice here. So that's instead. So don't look for a place to sign or anything. There is nowhere to sign on it. Okay. A couple other things. So we were going to use the online course environment today, the virtual classroom. It's not working. I'm assuming that they are not prepared for the number of people that are using it still for some reason. So I'm going to use this YouTube live stream thing for now. It works, but it's just not as interactive because I can't see you, and it's more difficult for you to add pages. Page 2 on the Google form seemed to be missing. Okay, I'll check that out, Braden. Hopefully there's not some mistake there. Okay, I'll investigate that. If you are currently in the live stream, would you just mind just giving me a here or a present so that I know that you're here. I just have to take like attendance for you guys that are at home too. So if you just type it in the chat here, present or whatever, I'll be able to do that. Thanks, Brody. Okay. What else is on my agenda here? Oh, library info. So we didn't get to everything in the little introduction. I'm just going to finish the content from day one. We got cut off because the online course environment stopped working. So where is it here? Day one, live stream content. So you guys already know that the library is closed, like physically closed, but it's not closed like to take books out. So you can still book a book. How does it work? Yeah, so you can use, this is, by the way, again, this is posted on the course environment there. If you click on that library link in the day one stuff, you can click that little link right there to reserve a book. You just type in the book that you want to reserve in the library. I'm not sure exactly how the system works. And they will put your name on it and set it out in front of the library, and then you just go by and pick it up. So if you really want to take out a book, that's still available to you. I think they are going to open up the library later once they figure out how they're going to like clean it and stuff. But they haven't like figured that protocol out yet, so it's currently physically closed. And then have you guys ever used Overdrive before? Anyone ever used Overdrive before? No? Not using Overdrive. So Overdrive is like the digital version of the library. If you want to take out ebooks or audiobooks, there's actually quite a few audiobooks. So then you can click that link there. It's an app. I believe there's actually a Chrome extension for it as well, but it's an app for your phone or if you've got a tablet or something, and you can download it and then you can read ebooks. So I did them with my son over the break quite a bit, and so then you don't actually have to go to the library. So there's a ton of different books available on there. And Mr. Apple wants you to consider joining the library Google Classroom. There's a link for it right there. I mean, that's up to you if you want to do that. If you're looking for updated information on the functioning of the library. So that exists. What else is there? Right, this thing crashes every time. Oh, the science department has asked me to tell people about KCI Science Instagram. The link for it is right there at the bottom. I have no idea what's going to go on there this year, but in the past, I don't know, people post science-related memes and things like that on there. I don't know if that's something that floats your boat. Also, there's like announcements about events that science runs. I don't know what's going to run this year, so we haven't figured out any of that stuff yet, but we run the Science Olympics. Sometimes we participated in things like Science Fair and things like that. Again, don't know what's running this year, but if you're interested in information, like in science and technology activities, you can sign up for that, so that's available to you as well. Okay, so that covers the content from the live stream that I missed. Let's talk about what you were supposed to do on Friday, because I don't think a lot of people got to it. Some people did. So if you completed it and submitted it, that's awesome. If you tried writing the quiz at the end, the test your knowledge quiz, it didn't give you your results. That was my mistake. So I didn't set the quiz up so that it just gave you instant feedback and told you if you were right or wrong. I fixed that. So if you did do it, if you open it again, it will show you what your results were and tell you which ones were right and wrong. But if you haven't done it yet, it's working properly now. So just so you know, if you tried that last time. So all that stuff is under the day one stuff here under cellular biology. Some people mentioned to me that they weren't sure how to use Cami to edit the document. So I made a little tutorial. If you click that little here link up at the top, that goes through the process of using Cami to edit a PDF document, which we're going to do quite a bit, including today. We're going to do some notes together using Cami. So if you don't know how to use it or you've never used it before, take a moment to watch that video. Okay, I'm going to give you some time to finish the content, probably until 9:20. We were a little bit behind where I wanted to be here, but technical problems. But I'm going to give you till 9:20 to continue working on that activity if you're not done. Okay, because I know some people that didn't get a chance to work on it on Friday. So you might want to watch that tutorial. Most of us watch these. We watch these videos in class, right? I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah. So if you haven't watched them, if you're at home and you haven't seen them, they're available there on the day one stuff. So this stuff was supposed to be from Friday. Okay, what's happening? There we go. And then you're going to make a copy of this Organelles of the Cell PDF on your own Google Drive. Okay, we're going to be doing that a lot. I would highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, that you create a folder in your Google Drive for this course. Okay, create an SBI3CI folder, and then make a subfolder in that folder for this unit, which is cell biology. Okay, or is it cell biology? Cellular biology, yeah. So that way you can keep your documents straight. So when you download this document, Organelles of the Cell, put it in there so you can find it later. Then you're going to open it up with Cami. So you're going to, again, the instructions are at the top if you go through the little tutorial. And then you're going to complete the activity. I'll open it here and show you what we're going to do. I didn't have an opportunity to show you this last time. So this is it right here. You're going to, on Explore Learning, so you're going to go to explorelearning.com. There's also a link, by the way, to Explore Learning in the online course environment, which is going to crash again. Oh, it didn't crash. It's up at the top. It just says Gizmos. That's the Explore Learning website. So if you click on there, it takes you to Explore Learning. You hopefully made your account on Friday. We did that together. You log into your account, and then there's an Organelles of the Cell activity that's on there. You open the activity, and you're going to use that to fill this out. So you can look at the plant or the animal cell, and then you've got to identify these structures. I'm hoping this is review from grade 10 for most of you. Question mark? Organelles of the cell. The first couple things we're going to do together is hopefully a review from grade 10. I'm not getting a lot of feedback here. Did you guys do this in grade 10? Yeah. You did. Okay. So this is hopefully a review. So we're going to look at what they look like, and then their sort of structure and function. That is, like, in general, what does it look like? You guys are going to sketch it over on this side, and then its function. What is the main function? You're going to try and boil down the function to a phrase or a couple phrases about what it does. Okay? Once you've had an opportunity to do that, save it. Don't forget to save it in Cami, because it'll save that PDF document, and then with all of your edits and stuff in it. Then you can open up. I wonder what's making it crash every time. Then you can open up the little quiz. Okay, so that's step number 5 here. That's just to check your knowledge from the activity, see how you did. It's not for marks, at least not right now. These are not for marks, so these are just to check your own knowledge. We are going to have a quiz. I got to figure out when this is going to be. I think at the end of the day tomorrow. And we'll have it cover all of the content that was up until the end of today. Okay? I'm going to keep the quizzes very light. We'll call them like 10 marks multiple choice. Okay? We're going to do it at the end of the day. Same thing for you at home. I haven't figured out exactly how this is going to work, but there'll be a link for it in the online learning environment. Because I do have to do some kind of knowledge check from you from what we've covered from yesterday and today. So I think we're going to do that in the form of like a short quiz. And we're also going to have a major assignment that we're going to work on the last day of this unit, which is Wednesday, if you can believe it. It's in 2 days. And so on that Wednesday, you guys are going to be preparing a presentation, and it's going to incorporate some of the things that we've learned over the last few days. And that's going to be your final assessment for the unit. It's not going to be a unit test. So we're going to do it as an assignment with a rubric. And I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off. You got to do the work, which is, you know, something, but it's not like the high pressure environment of a unit test. Since I think this is all new for you guys, right? Like this is like a new strategy of learning and stuff. I don't want to put too much pressure on you right away. And also the board, I think, wants us to kind of step back a little bit from heavy testing. We're also not going to do an exam at the end of the semester. So everything I've been reading is suggesting that we shouldn't do exams. So I think instead of an exam, we're going to also do some type of short project. We'll do for the last 2 days of the unit during the exam period. And you're going to come in and prepare some type of presentation about some of the things that you've learned in the unit. You're going to create like a little portfolio. I'll get in more detail about that later, but it's not going to be an exam. Okay, and then I'm going to assess that, and that's going to help determine your final grade in the course. Okay, so just I don't know if that takes some pressure off people, but we're not going to do an exam. So while you're working on all this stuff, don't forget that you always have that vocabulary list in the background. That's due on Wednesday at midnight. It's due at the end of the unit. and you're just going to be updating it as we go through the activities. Oh, here's 5 words, let's add it to the vocabulary list. Oh, here's 2 words I don't know, add it to your vocabulary list. Okay, just add them as you go along. If you don't add them as you go along, it's just going to be some big task that you have to do at the end of the unit, and that's a pain. So you're probably not going to want to do that. So don't forget that vocabulary list is always in the background. That's going to be in every unit. So there's always going to be one assignment in the background that you're always just doing that vocabulary list. Okay? I mentioned this little learning block 3 thing here. I was supposed to be available for questions. It was broken and it didn't work yesterday until like the last few minutes of class in the learning block 3. So that's the 1250 to 205 block. But today, fingers crossed, I'm hoping that it is going to work and I'll be available for questions during that time, okay? Obviously, ideally, I will be. If for some reason that fails and it's not functioning at that time, I'm going to open up one of these live streams and I'll post a link to it. It's not as good because I can't see your face and it's harder for us to communicate. We have to communicate through chat, but it's something. So at least that it will be available if the virtual classroom doesn't work, just so you know. And that's just a drop-in time. So you don't have to come virtually during that time. You can just do whatever work you need to do. But if you have questions, please come and check, okay? And then I mentioned this yesterday at the end. Consider why you took biology a career. We were going to start that career assignment today during block 3. But I found out that when you sign up for the online service, it's like a service, career service. I don't know, you guys might have done this in careers class. It's called Blueprint or something like that? Yeah, My Blueprint. Oh, you guys used this before. Okay, so you may have already used that. So we're going to use that for a big part of the research on your career, like in biology that you were going to choose. But when I log into it, it takes like several days for it to authorize me as a teacher. So I logged into it on Friday and it said, I checked this morning, I'm still not authorized as a teacher, so I can't use it yet. So I'm waiting for that. As soon as that's available, then we're going to start that assignment in Learning Block 3, but it's not available right now to me. So just as a heads up, that is still going to happen. So again, consider what career you want to discuss. Okay, so you may notice at the side. So like I said, I'm going to give you until 9:20 to work on that, maybe a little bit longer. We're already at 9 o'clock here. I expected to be a touch ahead of this. I will leave this live stream up, so you might want to leave it open at home, like in the background. I'll put up my little, the little placeholder or whatever when I'm not online, and then I'll come back. You'll get audio again once we're going to get started again. So today's content is supposed to be the day 2 content on here. So you'll notice there's quite a lot here. Okay, keep in mind that we're supposed to cover 4 hours of content every day. That's how much stuff we're supposed to do. It's 4 regular periods of work. So I realize it's going to feel like a lot of stuff. It may be too much. So what I've included in here may be more than what people can realistically accomplish in a day. If that's where we are at the end of the day, I'm going to chat about that with you guys, okay? Apologies if that's true. I don't really know how to pace the course very well yet. I've never done this before. So if this is too much content, we may delay some of the stuff to the next day. But ideally, this is what we're going to cover today. This is what we're going to shoot for in order to get all the content done by the end of this unit. So it says join us in the virtual classroom meeting. That didn't work. We're doing this live stream instead. Thank you for being flexible. The first thing you want to do is you're going to take up the activity that we did on Friday, or possibly you're doing right now, okay? There's a link right there to a Google Doc, which is my version, completed version of that worksheet from Friday. You don't need to redo yours, but I do give you the basic function of each organelle as I see it, okay? What I believe is the boiled down one phrase, what does this organelle do? Check yours. If it's similar, oh, this removes cell waste, don't worry about it, you're good. But if it's way off, if maybe you've picked out something that is a minor thing that organelle does and not the major function, you may want to edit your document, okay? So take a moment to go through there. It won't take you very long if you're already done. But just check to make sure that you're on the right track for each organelle, all right? So that's there. And then for like I said, at 9:20 approximately, we may be a little bit later depending on where students are, we're going to come back to the live stream and we're going to do a note together. So that note is at that link right there. You guys are going to need to download that and make a copy and then open it up in Cami, okay? So whenever at your discretion, you're going to want to do that because you're going to fill that in as we go. There's not a ton to fill in. I realize people have never used this software before. It's going to be a bit of a pain. So there isn't just like blanks everywhere, but there is stuff to fill in the note, and you can use it to highlight stuff that you think is important as well. Okay? And as always, if you find vocabulary in there that you think is important, highlight it and then come back at the end, add it to your vocabulary list. So that's what we're supposed to do in Learning Block 1. This is probably going to extend into Learning Block 2 a bit because the note is quite lengthy. It's mostly review from last year, but we are going to cover a little bit of new content as well. So that's the note that we're going to do towards the end of this block. Then, in the second half, that is Learning Block 2, there is an assignment posted here. Oh, hold on a second. That didn't look right. Day 2. Hold on a second, guys. Loading. There we go. So that's the link to my live stream. Once we're done the lesson together, there is a little video here from YouTube, which is a summary of what's in the note in terms of the macromolecules. So it goes over it again, but it's a brief summary. It's a good idea to watch it. It'll help cement some of the knowledge from the note that we just did together, and it has really nice animations for a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. Okay? It's a short video. I think it's like 7 minutes long. And it's just a quick review. So watch that. Then there is some reading from your textbook, 6 to 17, okay? Page 6 to 17. You can do it on the physical textbook. You can do it in the online textbook. It's totally up to you. If you want to use read-along software, like I said, I can show you how to do that. Let me know. Well, I better check the stream to see if anyone commented. Okay, no one has yet. So you're going to go through that. And then there are some questions that you're going to do. It's questions number 1 to 4 on page 20. You're just going to do those in a Google Doc, okay? Save them in the same folder on Google Drive where you're doing the rest of the coursework, okay? For these, I'm not going to collect these questions, okay? There are days where I'm going to collect the homework questions as part of an assignment, but I'm not going to collect these ones. You should do these, though, because it is like a little summary of what we've just covered, and you do need to know that information. So I would highly recommend that you do the questions. You should do them. Once you're done that, you're going to go to Explore Learning, and we're going to do another one of those online labs. There is a Google Doc at this link right here where it says copy of this Google Doc. You make a copy of that, and it takes you through the online lab step by step on Explore Learning. Click on this. What does this say? Click on this. What did you learn about this? You know, that kind of thing, okay? This I am going to collect, okay? So this lab is quite lengthy. What it is you're going to be taking samples of cells from various tissues. It's an online lab, so you're not doing it in real life, but this is our closest approximation. You're going to look at it under the microscope, which is a virtual microscope, okay? And then you're going to look at the structures, the organelles that you can see in those cells. Different tissues have different organelles that are more prominent. For example, mitochondria. What does that do? Anybody remember? This is the one that everyone knows. Powerhouse of the cell, right? It makes energy. So some tissues are going to have more of those than others. For example, muscle tissue has more mitochondria. They use more energy because they're moving around all the time, okay? And so then when you look at a muscle cell under the microscope, there's more mitochondria in it. I mean, like the organelles are there for a reason. So you can actually see the differences between cell types. So the lab is all about examining the differences in organelles between different types of tissues, depending on what those tissues do. Okay, it's going to take you through, that's one of sort of the main thrusts of the cellular biology unit, which is how do the parts in the cell do things? Like how are they actually different in the different tissues that you have? And so that lab is going to take you through that. Okay? So, it's like I said, it's quite lengthy. I would guess that the online lab, if you're kind of going through it at a decent pace, will take you about 2 hours. Okay? So it's quite long. I recommend that you just keep chugging away at it. This is the one thing where I'm not sure everybody is going to reasonably finish this today. It's possible that we're going to get into learning block 3 and people are like, okay, I'm nowhere near done this virtual lab. That's fine. Then we're going to bump that into tomorrow. So if you're not done it by the end of today, it's not super problematic. Let's kind of see where we're at, okay? We do have a lot of time to work in here today. It's a surprisingly long time. So we'll see. We'll see where we're at the end of the day, but this might get partially bumped to the next day. So if you're looking for this note, if you go to the online learning environment, I'm just going to call it Brightspace. That's what it's called. So if you go to Brightspace and you go to Content, and you go to Unit 1, Cellular Biology, that's where we are. We're day 2. And then you scroll down, and it says, attend the lesson live stream at 9:20. We're a little bit behind. It says we'll be covering cell theory and macromolecules. You'll need to have this note. So if you click on this note, there's the note right there in PDF form. You're going to want to make a copy of that. So in the top right-hand corner, there should be a button to make a shortcut in your own drive. You're going to make a shortcut, and then when you open Cami, you can open the shortcut, and you should be able to edit this PDF. Just make sure that you save a copy when you're done editing it. Okay, so we're going to go through this note together. Like I said, we're just going to basically be getting started before the break, so we won't make it all the way through this. Sometimes I think that if we are going to do notes together, I will pre-record them so you watch the pre-recorded video, but I don't really have this course made yet. So pre-recording the notes may not actually happen this quadrimester, so it may actually be that I'm just doing them with you, and then the video will be available afterwards if you miss anything. So, okay. Question?
Where's the note that you took on? It's day 2.
It's under the day 2 stuff. Do you want me to throw it back up on the screen here again?
I'm on day 2.
Okay, so the day 2 tab over there, see it? And then if you scroll down, it says learning block 1, and then it says you'll need to have this note. There it is right there. There's a link right below to this live stream as well. Is everybody okay with that? I'll give people a minute to open this up in Cami. I know it takes a second to make the link and stuff. What's that, sorry? You should, yeah, because then you can edit it, and there's some blanks and stuff, so you can edit it.
What do you do if you already have something going on Canada?
Save that, and then you can just open this, and you can come back to it later. You'll have the document saved, so you can open it up again at any time. Yes. 10:20. I'm going to call it nutrition break because it's really not a full lunch. But yes, 10:20. Okay, I'll give you guys a second. I know this takes a second to open up, so. Yeah, you have to make a shortcut in your drive, and then you can open into the shortcut with Cami. Yes. Then you save a copy when you're done. The button is in the top right. It's the one that looks like a little 3.5 floppy disk. The save button. So once you save it, then if you open it again in your drive, it'll. What's that? Yeah, and you can pick where you want to save it to. So save it in your drive.
Are we going on this note? There's this thing that's like highlighted.
That's right. This note. That's right. That's the note. Yep. So you're going to save a shortcut of that into your drive in your folder for this course, and then you're going to open that in Cami. Okay, we're back. Please let me know if you still are getting audio issues at home. I think that they've been resolved at this point. Hopefully they have. So you guys should have a copy of this note up. That goes for you guys here too, hopefully. Open with Cami so that you can edit it. Is everybody okay with that? We've resolved that? Yeah? Okay, now we can actually get started. So the first half of this lesson, I've broken into 2 halves here. I've got cell theory as one half, and macromolecules is the second half here. The cell theory component, which we're going to start with, is review from grade 10, or at least it should be review from grade 10. I don't know about all of your experiences from grade 10, but this should be review. If it's not review, you may have to spend a little bit more time with this, and that's okay, not a huge deal. But I just wanted to mention that this stuff should have been covered in grade 10. So what we're going to talk about here is the characteristics that all living things share. So you would have probably done that in grade 10. We're going to talk about cell theory, like the basic tenets of cell theory. What is cell theory? And then the last part here is the basic levels of organization of living things. So that's the main thrust of the grade 10 curriculum. Cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make organ systems make organisms. Does that sound vaguely familiar? Okay, hopefully it sounds a little bit familiar. So you should have covered that in grade 10. So the reason I'm going to go over this stuff again is it's kind of essential that you have that baseline knowledge before we start getting into the grade 11 content. So let's go through and talk about these things first. So I believe these are blanks on your note. Is that correct? So you're going to have to fill these in as we go. So first of all, before I get to the actual characteristics of living things, if you think about what makes something alive, so I mean, I'm assuming in your mind you have a general structure for what makes something a living thing and what makes something non-living. What do you think of? What's your standard for what makes something alive? What does it need to have? What's an example?
Food.
It needs to eat food, right? It needs to consume something to get energy. Okay, so that's one of them. Nutrition is a requirement. That's the first one I've got on my list here. Okay, it's got to eat something. What else?
Cells.
Okay, so it's made out of cells. That is true for all living things. They are all made out of cells. We don't generally call that a characteristic of living things, although all living things do have that. I'm going to add it to my list. I don't have that here, but I'll add it as a number 8.
Don't non-living things have that too?
Give me an example.
I don't know.
I can't think of a non-living thing that's composed of cells, so I'll give you that one. I didn't have it on my list. What else?
But say a tree fell, and now it's a fallen tree. That's technically dead. Would it still have? It still have cells.
I guess it does.
It just wouldn't be alive.
It just has dead cells.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that's the reason it's not on the list. I'm actually going to get rid of this. Because you're right. Because in order for me to put that on the list, I would have to say that it has living cells, and then I'm using living to define living. So I don't think you can do that. So I'm going to leave it off the list for that exact reason. But you're right, though, that they are all made of cells. I'm going to leave that off the list. What else? What else is something that makes something alive to you, Kitab?
Breathing.
Breathing. Okay. So it has some type of metabolism for processing energy. We breathe to utilize oxygen. Not all species do that. So there are all kinds of bacteria, single-cell organisms that don't respire. They don't use oxygen. Some of them breathe in other gases, or they use other gases for their metabolism. So it doesn't have to be oxygen that they're breathing, but they do have to have some type of metabolism, and it usually involves gas exchange of some kind.
I can give you 2, but
All right.
it is not characteristic though. It's just called cellular structure.
Cellular structure. They okay. All right.
And reproduction.
Reproduction is a good one. Okay, they have the ability to make more of themselves. What else? Kind of casually showing you these here too. Growth. They get bigger over their life. That's true for single-celled organisms and for multi-celled organisms. They increase in size over their lifetime.
Movement.
They move around. Okay, they don't necessarily have to move from place to place. Obviously, like a tree doesn't go anywhere, but but it does have the ability to move in terms of through growth or through the where it positions its growth of its stems and roots and things like that. So it is moving, but it is not necessarily moving to a new location. It doesn't have locomotion. So locomotion is not necessary. Anything else? I can give you my list here. So I've also got excretion on here. It removes waste products. That's part of metabolism. Sometimes the nutrition and excretion is put together into one thing, just metabolism. In other words, it takes in energy molecules, it gets rid of waste products. Or you can separate them out too. Is that a hand up? Is that? No, it's just stretching. Cool. And then the last thing I have on my list here is the idea of sensitivity or response to stimuli. So for some organisms like you have a nervous system so you can respond to stimuli. But even single-celled organisms respond to stimuli. They will move towards an area that has more food molecules in it, or they will change their rate of growth depending on the amount of something that's present in their environment, or whatever. If they can change their behavior based on what is in their environment, that's a response to stimuli. And all living things do that to some extent. So it's interesting that if you use these, in other words, you say all living things do all of these. Do you have another one?
No. Would passing traits into offspring count?
Would what, sorry?
Passing traits into offspring.
Yeah, so that's the reproduction component here. Yep, absolutely. So they have a continuous passing on of traits through reproduction. Yep. So if we establish this as our list, I think that if you apply this to any living thing that you can think of, use okay, well, ant, alive, does all these things. There are a couple things that I would put in like the maybe column. Actually, there's only one thing I can think of off the top of my head that I put in the maybe column. So I'm gonna use viruses as an example. Because in general, I think we think about viruses as being alive. The problem is that they don't do any of these things. So they don't take in any nutrition. They don't actually use food. So they don't do that. They don't have any metabolism on their own. They're just like a piece of DNA in a little pocket, or RNA. So they don't do that. They don't move. They don't have no excretion, so they don't remove waste products. They don't grow, so they're the same size for their entire life cycle. They don't reproduce on their own, although they do reproduce inside of living things, other living cells. They hijack the machinery of a living cell to reproduce. So they don't on their own reproduce. They have to, something else reproduces for them, basically. And they have no type of response to stimuli whatsoever, because they're basically just a molecule. So this is a weird example of something that I think in general is considered to be alive, but it doesn't meet any of these. So I will say that the definition is a little bit flexible. Question?
So how could it be alive though if it doesn't have any?
So, I mean, by the strict biological definition of life, they're not alive. But they operate a lot like a living thing in that they can do these things, except they have to tell a cell to do these things for them. So they're not doing any of these things on their own. Something else is doing it for them. So I'm not, maybe you wouldn't call a virus alive by this strict definition, but I think if you're a virologist, you probably would call them alive. So I will say that the definition is a little bit flexible. And you'll see that a lot in biology. You'll like learn like a rule. It's like, this is the rule for everything. And then you're like, except for this. There's like this weird exception at the end. So that tends to happen a lot in biology. So that, like I said, there's a little bit of flexibility here, but in general, you need all these things for living things. You guys were just looking at the organelles, and you may have noticed that these are the things that organelles do. So for example, respiration, there's specifically an organelle for that. What's the respiration organelle? The one that does metabolism, that converts energy or makes energy for the cell out of food. There's an organelle for that. It does that thing for the cell. It's the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah.
Mitochondria?
Mitochondria. Okay, so they do these jobs. If you look at things like movement, if we're talking about cellular movement, like an actual movement of a single cell, there are organelles that do cellular movement. I didn't put it on my list there, but it was in the gizmo. Did anyone see what the cellular movement one was?
Transport stuff maybe?
That's moving stuff around inside the cell. So that's actually more related to metabolism than it is to actual movement. But there is movement happening in there. No? So some cells have an organelle called flagella. That's like the little tail that some cells have. Not a lot of animal cells have that, but there are protists and things like that have flagella, or they have the little hair-like cell organelles on the outside called cilia that help them move around. So those are organelles that help cells move. If we're talking about a multi-celled, so that would be if it's a single-celled organism. So a single cell would have something like a flagella. But if you're like a multi-cell organism, you move around with proteins that are inside of your cells. Those proteins are part of the cytoskeleton. Cytoskeleton is just a series of proteins that run around inside the cell and create a structure inside the cell. Later on, we're going to talk about muscle tissue. Actually, if you already did part of the online lab activity and you looked at the muscle tissue, they talk about how there is those striations inside the muscle tissue, which are proteins that physically make the cell smaller or longer. That's what muscle cells do, right? They get shorter. That's how you contract your muscles. So that is an organelle that is physically moving the cell around. So I'm going to put just proteins here at the bottom. Let's see. Reproduction. Do you guys do mitosis in grade 10, right? How cells divide? What structures are involved in mitosis? Which organelles? What do you have to make a copy of in mitosis? You guys remember this? No? So it's mostly the DNA that you have to copy, right? Which is in the nucleus. So in reproduction, the nucleus is involved. You got to copy DNA. No one else remembers the other things. Microtubules, does this sound familiar? Those are the little strings that attach to the DNA and pull them to either side of the cell. Yeah. Sometimes they're called spindle fibers. Does that sound familiar? No. You don't have to know this. This is a review from grade 10. But these are all cell organelles that are doing these jobs. Okay. Let's see. What else would there be here? Growth. Okay. There is an organelle that's responsible for building structures inside of the cell, making proteins. Which one's that? Ribosomes. Okay. And I've heard it pronounced ribosomes before too, so I don't think that's necessarily wrong, just so you know. So I'm trying to tie this into what we were just talking about here with the organelles. Okay, all of these traits of living things are being done by the organelles inside the cell. They're doing these things. Excretion, removing waste products from the cell. What's the organelle that does that? You guys are probably going to want to go back and review these. Lysosomes. Okay, so anyway, the organelles are doing these functions of life. So if you do get smaller than a cell unit, and this is where what you said comes in here, that the living things have to be made out of cells. If you go any smaller than one cell unit, you all of a sudden don't have all of these functions being performed anymore, and you don't have life. So in other words, if you like took a mitochondria out of a cell, you wouldn't call it alive because it can't do all of these things anymore. It can do some of them, but it can't do all of them. So you got to have at least a full cell to do this. Okay, so let's think about here about historically, pre-1665. what we thought about living things. Not much. So before this time period, the microscope wasn't invented yet, and we had nothing to look at living things other than eyes. And you can imagine what that's like if you look at yourself just with your eyes. You really can't tell too much about what this stuff is made out of. It's pretty hard. And so pre-1665, we really didn't know anything about how living things worked at a level below what we could see with our eyes. We knew about anatomy and organs and things like that. But if you go smaller than that, no idea. We didn't know why people got sick, so we didn't have germ theory. We didn't understand that bacteria existed, that you don't want to drink water that is contaminated with microorganisms and things like that. So pre-1665, we didn't know anything. But then at that time, the Hooke microscope was invented, Robert Hooke. And that's when we stopped using this idea of the 4 elements model. So what are cells made out of? Earth, air, fire, water. It's almost like sort of like a magic, I guess. We don't really know. And then sort of overnight, we figured out, okay, these cells are actually made out of, smaller things, organelles, cells. They seem to be alive on their own. Okay, and we learned the 3 basic parts of cell theory, which have been a little bit modified over time, but this is from observing cells with a microscope. So, and one of those things is, again, what you just mentioned here, which is that all living things are made out of cells. And again, I know the virus is kind of an exception here, if you consider it alive. So that's the first tenet of cell theory, is that everything is made out of cells.
Staff and students, please remember, students, that you need to keep 6 feet apart from one another for social distancing. That includes when you're outside. You shouldn't be walking shoulder to shoulder with friends. You need masks on if you can't socially distance. And once you enter the school, your mask should be on. Have a great day.
The second thing that we learned is that the cell is the base unit. It's the simplest unit that does all life processes. As I mentioned, if you break down the cell and you go smaller than that to just organelles, it doesn't do all the things. So then all of a sudden you lose some of those life processes. It can't reproduce, it can't use energy, and so then we don't consider that to be alive anymore. You gotta have a full cell. And then the last part of cell theory here is the idea that all cells come from pre-existing cells. In other words, cells don't spontaneously appear. If you have a sealed container with no living things in it, you're not suddenly going to get living things in it. And that seems probably obvious to you. You guys grew up probably with a general understanding of cell theory, this idea. But in the 1600s, like, this was not well established. Like, people thought that bacteria and things just appeared, like they just came out of nowhere. They didn't think that they came from previously existing cells. So this is the idea of continuity that you mentioned, which is that genetics are passed on from one generation to the next. And bacteria and microorganisms do that as well. They pass on their DNA to the next generation. Okay, so those are the 3 tenets of cell theory. You need to know those, by the way. I'll file those away somewhere. Some general facts about cells, which you may or may not have covered in grade 10. Your body has between 37 and 100 trillion cells in it. That's a lot. So they're really small. Not all cells in your body are the same size. So your red blood cells are among the smallest cells. They're about 10 times smaller than the largest cells in your body. So there's quite a bit of range in terms of the size of cells. Red blood cells are very small, but then you get other cells like neurons. You can have a single neural cell with its axon going from your spinal cord all the way up to the tip of your finger. That's one single cell with a super long axon going the entire way. So like that's a very long cell. So some cells can be really big, and then you've got other cells that are just very, very, very small. We already talked about this, the idea that organelles are the functional units. They're smaller. And I mentioned this on the first day, just in passing, but it bears mentioning again. There are 2 general types of cells. Prokaryotes, we're going to talk a little bit more about diversity in a later part of the unit, but prokaryotes are bacteria and something that, for all intents and purposes, is exactly like bacteria, archaea, and they are the simplest form of cells. So when you look at these under the microscope, first of all, they're extremely small. So these are a lot smaller than a cell that you would see if you looked at like a cheek cell, or maybe you guys have looked at an onion or something like that under the microscope. Have you guys ever done that? So those cells are actually pretty big compared to bacterial cells. Bacterial cells are like a tenth that size, very, very small. They're very hard to see under our light microscopes. Under the highest magnification, they just look like a dot. So they're very small. And they don't really have a lot going on inside. They have ribosomes, so they have like little smaller dots inside that are ribosomes, and they have little pieces of DNA inside. Sometimes that DNA is in a circle, and sometimes it's just like a little stick of DNA. The circle is called a plasmid. We're going to come back to this later. So, and that's pretty much it. That's really all the cellular machinery that prokaryotes have. It's not very much. They're good at reproducing quickly and living in diverse environments, but they don't do complex things. And that's bacteria. Eukaryotes are all the other living things. So animals, plants, fungi, protists, a huge amount of variety. And they're much, much more complex if you look inside them. You guys have already looked at a eukaryotic cell, animal and plant cells. Those are both eukaryotic cells. So they're quite a bit bigger compared to a little tiny prokaryotic cell. And then they have all the stuff that you'd expect to find inside. You got your nucleus, and you got your Golgi, and your ER, your ribosomes and your lysosomes, and there's a Golgi apparatus and a vacuole, you know, all the things that you see inside cells. So those are eukaryotic cells. They're very, very complicated. And we're not really going to get into evolution too much in this course, but they evolved later. They're not as old evolutionarily as prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells have been around for a very, very long time, billions of years. Questions about anything we've covered here so far? I'll mention that for the people at home too. Sorry for the people at home that are giving me answers here while I'm talking. I'm trying to look at both places at the same time, but it's pretty hard. No questions. Okay. Was that a question? No. Okay. The last thing I'll mention here about cells in general is that there is a size limit. They're limited to how large they can grow because they have to do all of those life functions. And in order to do that and do gas exchange and stuff like that, they need to do all of that across their cell membrane. They have to pass everything across their cell membrane. So if you can imagine, you've got a cell. Nucleus. Then let's say it's an animal cell, like a human cell, okay? You got to get oxygen into the cell. That's one of the things you got to get in. You got to get stuff out of the cell. What's one thing that your cells are trying to get rid of? What do they not want in them? Any ideas? What are you breathing out that your cells are getting rid of? Carbon dioxide, okay? So that's one thing. You got to get that CO2 out. They want to take nutrients in. Can anyone name a nutrient that cells need to take in? You eat it. What's that? Water. Sure. Food like sugar or something like that? Carbohydrates? Sure.
Salt.
Taking what's that?
Salt.
Salt?
Yeah.
Yep, so they might need to take in sodium or potassium or something like that. Sure. Sugar, they might need to take in sodium or potassium. All those things, right? They got to take their nutrients in and out. And all of that stuff has to happen across the cell membrane. So if you keep making the cell bigger, what ends up happening, I'm going to make a copy of this right here. Whoops. If you make this cell larger, what ends up happening is you got a lot more stuff in the middle that needs all of those things. There's more organelles that need oxygen. There's more carbon dioxide being produced. It might need more potassium. It might need more sodium. It might need more water, whatever. A lot more goo in the middle, stuff. But the amount that you've increased the surface area, the area around the outside, doesn't go up by very much when you make the cell bigger. So there's not as much capacity to get rid of your waste and bring in the stuff that you need. So eventually, as a cell gets bigger, it's going to get to a spot where it just can't get enough stuff in to support all the stuff in the middle, and that's the maximum cell size. So there is a max size. And that's why you don't see giant cells. Like you don't just see like an amoeba outside that's like the size of a person. Like that can't exist in nature because of this problem. There's just not enough gas exchange that will happen across that membrane to keep it alive. So there is a limit. And that's why one of the things you guys would have talked about in grade 10, that's why cells have to do what then when they get to their max cell size? Split, mitosis, right? So they got to do mitosis when they get big enough. And most multi-celled organisms do that. Single-celled organisms do that too. When they get too big, they just turn into 2 cells. So there is a limit. Okay. Last thing I'm going to mention here about cell theory. This general procession for organization of life. So cell is the simplest unit. We just mentioned that. I'm going to use muscle cell as my example here. So a single muscle cell, it's a long cell. And muscle cell is one of those cool cells that actually has more than one nucleus in it. So the reason it has more than one nucleus is because it's got to support all that big long cell, because muscle cells are quite long. So that's the simplest building block. We mentioned that, right? Simplest building block of life. If you get a whole bunch of these together, what do you call that? A whole bunch of cells, they're all doing the same thing. That's a tissue. Okay, and you would have talked about the 4 kinds of tissues in grade 10. 4 animal tissues. Does it sound familiar? No? I'm going to draw my tissue over here. So this is an example of a bunch of muscle cells getting together to form some muscle tissue. You're probably going to get an opportunity to look at these under the virtual microscope later today. Okay, so there's an example of some muscle tissue. So the 4 types of tissue, one of them's muscle, obviously. No idea what the other ones are? I'll give you one more. Nerve. Oh, not ringing any bells, eh? You did this in grade 10, but it's a long time ago. All right. Connective tissue is one. Connective tissue holds things together. No? Not triggering anything for you. Okay, and then the last one here is epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is the protective covering on things. So muscle moves stuff around, nerves send signals, connective tissue holds stuff together, and epithelial tissue covers. So all of the tissues that are in your organs are one of those 4. They're either moving stuff around, sending signals, holding stuff together, or covering. Okay? So those are the 4 tissues. If you get a whole bunch of tissue together, or a whole bunch of tissues, like maybe some examples of all 4 of these tissues, you get an organ. So an organ might be something like, let's say that you got a whole bunch of this. Let's see if I can, I'm hoping I can do this justice here. I post all these notes at the end, by the way, if you're missing anything, so you don't have to worry. They're in the course notes. If you look at the very top of the classroom, you'll see that there's a course notes folder up there, and these will all be in there. So like, let's say that that's sitting on your skeleton, and it's one of its attachments is, oh, I'm going to do such a terrible job here, my apologies. Let's see, there's one bone here, and then this attachment is on the big one right here, which is called the ulna. And got this bone right here. there's a muscle that connects here to your radius or to your ulna, and then also to your uh-oh. My mind's slipping. What's this bone called? Humerus. No? Humerus? Okay, it's the humerus. So you got a muscle in between there. It flexes your arm. This muscle, you guys know what these are called, right? It's your bicep. It's your bicep muscle. Okay, so your bicep muscle is an example of an organ. It's a bunch of tissues working together for a common purpose. Okay, so this is a bicep muscle. I did have it written on there too, but this is the bicep. If you get a bunch of organs together and they're all working for a common purpose, so you take all of these different organs and you put them together, you end up with what's called an organ system. So an organ system is just a bunch of organs that are all doing the same general job for the organism. So in this case, it's all the different muscles in your body, your biceps, your triceps, your whatever. There's a lot, okay? Put them all together, and then you end up with a system. In this case, that's the muscle system. Okay, so if let's say, I'm a terrible artist, guys, so this is going to be always probably really painful. Oh, this is embarrassing. This is my attempt at drawing a skeleton. Don't judge me. I'm doing my best here. This person is in terrible proportion, but I'm not going to win any art awards, that's for sure. Okay, so you got some muscle tissue here, you got some muscle tissue here, you got some muscle tissue here, you got little muscles here. You've got a whole bunch here. You got your abdominal muscles, some muscles here, muscles here for your forearm to move your fingers. You've got some muscles in your neck. This guy looks super jacked now. You've got some facial muscles to move all the skin around on your face. You got your gluteal muscles, you got your calf muscles, anterior compartment, you got little muscles in your foot. Okay, so you put all these different muscles together and then you end up with your muscle system, okay, the muscular system. Then, if you get a bunch of organ systems together, you end up with what's called an organism. An organism is just a bunch of systems put together. That's for multiple-celled organisms. So there's obviously single-celled organisms, and then they have all of their systems just built into a single cell. We're going to talk about those later on in the unit. But multi-celled organisms, you got to put a bunch of these organ systems together. Was that a question by any chance? No. Okay. So then lastly, you got an organism. I'm not going to try and draw that one. That's going to be a real pain. But imagine all these systems sort of laid over top of each other. There are 11 systems in the human body. You would have covered this in grade 10 as well. Anybody remember what they are? I'm going to make my pencil a little smaller here. Respiratory is one. So that one's for gas exchange. Okay, I'll throw some out here. Circulatory. Jump in at any time, guys. Reproductive. Immune system.
It's been so long.
Nervous system. What's that?
I said it's been so long.
I know, it's been a long time. I'm trying to jog your memory. Nervous system.
Oh no, I was actually good at that too. I had like
Yeah, I
a
had
90
first
in
science
last year.
Awesome. It was a long time ago. I get it. I'm trying to get you guys to recall stuff from like a really long time ago.
I literally forget everything.
Everything. Hopefully you didn't forget every single thing. So we got respiratory, circulatory, reproductive, immune, nervous. Integumentary is your skin system for thermal regulation. You have your excretory system. That's the system that you use to remove urine. It's your kidneys and your bladder. How many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're missing a few still. Digestive? Oh, thank you. Thanks, Nadia. Digestive system.
What does it start with? What letter does it
I'm trying to think of them.
oh.
Respiratory, digestive, circulatory, nervous, immune, reproductive, integumentary, excretory. Oh, skeletal. That's your support system, your bones. Yeah. Yeah, that's the organ system. That's your skeletal system. Yeah. How many am I missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 2 more. Uh-oh. Do I have to look these up?
Like the first.
I should be able to pull these out of my mind for sure. It's been too long.
Does this cost a lot of memorization?
There is a piece of that, yes. I mean, biology, they're complex systems, right? So part of it is memorization. Understanding how the systems work is more important than memorizing stuff. But yes, there is an aspect that's memorization for sure. Ah.
Yeah. There you go, Jim.
Cardiovascular is a combination of circulatory and respiratory. And so sometimes those are combined together into the cardiovascular system. The vascular part is the circulatory, and the cardio part's the heart. Oh, did I put muscle on there? No, I didn't.
Yeah, must have. Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Should have got that one. That was my example. Nervous, I got nervous. Look this up. What am I missing? Oh, endocrine. Endocrine is your hormone system. So that'd be like your kidney, not your kidneys, your adrenal glands and your pituitary gland and things that make hormones for your body. So that's your endocrine system. There we go. That's 11, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, got them. So that's for humans anyway. Those are our 11 systems. Questions about this stuff? This is all review from grade 10. I'm hoping this is at least jogging a memory, right? People are like, oh, right. Sort of, kind of. Okay. So if you are not watching this live, I would say this is a great spot for you to take a short break. If you're here with us, I got to keep going. Actually, how long do we have till 12:50? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We got time for this. Okay. Yeah, we got to keep going. Okay. So I'm going to completely change gears here. All that we've talked about up until that point was review. This aspect here is, I don't think, review for anyone. You guys didn't talk about macromolecules, did you? No. So this will be all new for grade 11. So we talked about the organelles, the smallest pieces, right, of the cell, or at least the smallest organelles pieces, the subunits of cells. Well, those things are made of even smaller components. We're going to talk about stuff on the molecular level now. We're going to go even one smaller. And there are some basic molecules that make up the vast majority of the things within all of your cells. And these are also the things that you in general have to eat, because you need to build these things in your body. all living things need to build these structures, and so they need to take in some form of these. Okay, so you may have heard if you're like into like fitness or dieting or whatever, people call these your macros or whatever. Your macros, that's the same thing. Those are the macromolecules, the things you need to consume in large quantities in order to support building and the functioning of your cells. Okay, so we're going to talk about what those macromolecules are. We're going to talk a little bit about what they look like at a molecular level, and a little bit about how they're organized. So in general, what you guys need to take away from this is at the end of this, you're going to need to be able to name the 4 macromolecules. So you should know what they are, what the 4 most important molecules are. You should, in general, know how each macromolecule supports the function of a living thing. What are they used for in living things? And then the last part here is a little bit about their organization. So they come in different forms. And you guys may or may not already know this, that sugars can be just simple sugars when they're just like by themselves as a single molecule, or you can have complex sugars where they're hooked together in a big long chain. This stuff kind of comes up in like dietary information all the time. People talk about, oh, this has a lot of simple sugar in it, or like this has a complex carbs or whatever. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And then like for the purposes of cells, like why do they care what format it's in? Okay? All right, so as mentioned here, macromolecules, and you guys already know the word molecule from grade 10, right? It's a bunch of atoms that are chemically bonded together into a shape, okay? And these are functional shapes that cells are using here. So the macromolecules are the major chemicals that the body needs to support all the different chemical reactions that happen that keep the cell alive. So when we're talking about different little chemical reactions that are keeping the cell alive, that is what metabolism is. Metabolism is all the little tiny chemical reactions that your cells are doing in order to just do all of their life tasks. They want to build something over here. They want to break down sugar and make energy. They want to do this. That's all metabolism. So metabolism is just little chemical reactions that are happening inside the cells. As I mentioned, there's 4 major ones that all living things need. This is pretty consistent. Everywhere when you look at living things, they all need these particular macromolecules in different amounts because they're made out of them. So the 4 are, I have 5 now. So I will mention that water is an important molecule in living things. It's not always included in the list of macromolecules because it's not a large molecule. It's H2O, right? It's 1 O and 2 H's. It's actually a very tiny molecule. The macro in that case is that you need a lot of it. Not that it's a large molecule, but it's often not included in these lists because all these other molecules are large molecules that each cell needs to use in order to do its metabolism. So I said that there's 4/5. Water is kind of an important one too. So I'm going to talk about water, but it's sort of like a sideline one. Okay, so then the other ones here, the important ones are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. I'm going to go through these one at a time. We're going to talk about what they look like and what they're used for in your cells. So the 3 of those are the ones that you've probably heard the most about: carbs, proteins, and fats, right? Lipids are fats. So those are often like in like nutrition circles. Those are your macros. Those are the things you got to eat at certain amounts of every day if you want to build muscle or lose weight or do whatever. And then the nucleic acids part, you don't need those in large quantities, but you do need to consume some of them in order to build DNA, which we're going to talk about too. It's a large, important molecule. So I've got some diagrams of them here. I'm going to go through these one at a time. So first of all, let's talk about protein. Before we even get there, what do you use protein for? If you're a fitness guy, you may know why you need to take. Why do you need extra protein? Why might you take in 2 grams per kilogram body weight? That would be if you're a bodybuilder. That's what you would eat in a day. 2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. That's a lot, by the way.
Probably for your muscles.
So what? Yeah. So you'd build muscle tissue out of it, right? So you're going to build contractile proteins out of it. So that for a fitness person, that's the reason why you need to take in so much protein, so you can build muscle fibers. Muscle fibers are made of protein. So that's the big reason. And in general, it's because protein is used to build body structures. That's the key. So do you guys remember the organelle that does that? I'm going to include this here on the side as well. that builds proteins? I'm going to keep coming back to this because their function is important. Which of the little organelles actually builds the proteins?
Golgi apparatus.
The Golgi apparatus does the folding. It's the last step in making a protein. It is involved, but it doesn't actually make the protein. It just folds them at the end, puts them in a little package. Anyone know which ones actually build the protein? Ribosomes, okay? So this is ribosomes. I'll put in brackets here and Golgi. Because the Golgi does, you're right, it does do folding at the end, but it's not the thing that actually builds them. Okay, so it's responsible for building the structures. That's probably the most important role that you would hear about all the time. You want to build more cells, you want to build stronger cells. You need proteins for that, to build all the little machinery inside of the cell. It's made out of a smaller component, subunits, called amino acids. Oh, did I miss something here? Oh, ribosomes. Awesome, Carter. Yeah. Sorry, you guys are on a bit of a delay. So it takes those amino acids, it builds them up, it connects them all together into a big complex shape, and then that complex shape is folded into a protein. We're going to talk about that process on Wednesday? We only have 3. Oh my goodness, we have no time for this unit. Wednesday, I guess, the last day of the unit. We're gonna spend most of that time talking about how proteins are actually made. So we'll definitely come back to this. Other than the body's structures, they're also used to make messenger signaling molecules. So those messenger signaling molecules are called hormones. If you want to, for example, tell all the cells in your body, it's time for you to take in some sugar. You all need sugar, okay? Because there's too much sugar in the blood. We got to get it out of the blood, get it into the muscle, get it into the liver. You send out a hormone that tells all your cells, okay, it's time for us to do this. Anyone know what hormone that is? If you're diabetic, you probably know, because you don't make this, or can't use it anyway. Do you know?
No, I was gonna take a guess, but I don't think that's it.
Okay, fair enough. Glucose is the sugar itself. Ah, you got it. Insulin. So insulin is a hormone. It's a protein, but it's used to send a message to the other cells to tell them to do things. Things like testosterone, estrogen, those are all proteins. They're hormones used for signaling. Yes?
What does testosterone do? Isn't that for like males?
Males and females both produce some testosterone. Males produce a lot more than females do.
But what is like what's its like?
It's a sexual characteristic hormone. So if you have a fairly high amount of testosterone, it causes the development of secondary sexual characteristics like body hair, and it causes an increase in the size of your larynx. It deepens your voice. All the secondary sexual characteristics, things that you get at puberty for males, most of those are caused by testosterone signaling. It also increases the development of muscle mass, which is why you see people using that for doping, right? Like people take testosterone. Well, not so much anymore, but people used to take testosterone for, if you're a bodybuilder.
Testosterone now, even for females, you can make their stuff because like now that we have all this stuff that you can like transgender stuff like that, you could just like use all your.
You can alter the amounts that your body makes of these. Yeah, you're right. You're right, and you can also give exogenous versions of them. So you can give somebody estrogen, you can give somebody testosterone. It does all the same signaling, but it just comes from outside. So that is possible. Anyway, so those are hormones. They're also proteins. And the last major role that proteins do is that they help chemical reactions happen in your body. Okay, that is, they assist in metabolic activity. So those types of proteins are called enzymes. So for example, when you eat food, you have to break down all of that food into smaller pieces. That is an enzyme that you're producing in your stomach that breaks protein down into smaller pieces. It's called pepsin. What's another example of a cool enzyme? I'm having trouble thinking about them off the top of my head. But anyway, they assist in chemical reactions. So you want a certain chemical reaction to happen in a cell, you usually have to produce an enzyme that makes that chemical reaction happen. It can break stuff down, it can help build things. All kinds of stuff is mediated by enzymes. So that's another major thing. So the three things here, you can build structures, so build stuff out of them. You can do messaging between things, between cells, or you can change the rate of chemical reactions with enzymes. Those are the three things that proteins are responsible for in your body. Okay, so that's proteins. Just really quickly looking at the molecular structure here, I will mention that in this course, you don't have to know what the molecular structure is. Okay, so this isn't strictly part of the course, I'm just showing you. If you ever are planning on transitioning into grade 12 bio, like if you're taking 4U bio, well, I think you have to go back and take 3U first. But if you ever wanted to do that, it's very heavy in biochemistry, so they'll talk a lot about this if you're interested. But proteins, again, are amino acids. Here's an example of an amino acid right here. It's got a nitrogen on one side, and then it has this R group at the bottom. And the R group can be all different kinds of shapes. So every amino acid has a different shape there. It might have a molecule that looks like this, or it might have a molecule that looks like this. There's all these different types of molecules, and the R group on every different amino acid is different. It's kind of, if you think about it for proteins, it's kind of like Legos. So they fit together to build a protein, but every Lego, every amino acid is a different shape. So that's why you can build all these different kinds of proteins, because you have like a set of 25 of these shapes, and you just build them in a different configuration. You can make them do all kinds of different things. That's why proteins are so diverse. Did I see a hand up over here somewhere?
No? I never mind.
Anyway, so that's proteins. It's a whole bunch of these linked together. They're like Legos. Okay? So that's proteins. Fats. Primary use for fats. You guys can probably think of this just off the top of your head. What do you use fats for? Why do you eat them?
Oh. Good fat.
You store it if you don't use it. So that's true. Now, I will say that any of these macros, if you eat too much of them, you'll store them as fat. All of them. You can convert them into fat. Not sure? Kitab, you want to take a shot at it? What's that? Energy. It's an energy molecule. So fat is actually a very dense energy molecule. So energy storage is really one of its primary functions. It's really the reason that animals are seeking to eat fat. It's why fat tastes good to us, because it assists in our survival, because we need energy to survive. So that's the main reason that animals are consuming fat. Their secondary function is that they're used to build cell membranes. And this is what we're going to get into tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about cell membranes and how they work. You guys are going to do a little lab on diffusion, a virtual lab, sorry, on diffusion, and look at like how cell membranes actually allow things to pass in and out of the cell membrane. But the cell membranes themselves, all of the cell membranes for every single one of your cells is built out of fat. So that is one of the uses for fat. If you look at the structure of them, usually when you eat fat, it's in the form of triglycerides. If you've ever had a blood test, you guys probably haven't had this yet, you're way too young to have a triglyceride test, but if you're getting a physical at your doctor, they will check your blood triglycerides. If they're very high, it's generally not super healthy to have a very high fat content in your blood. It might mean that your dietary fat is too high, but and it's not good for your blood vessels long term to have high triglycerides in your blood. But those triglycerides are primarily how you consume fat, and they are, where are they up here? Here we go. Here, this molecule on the end here is called glycerol. That's this. And then there's these three chains right here. These are called fatty acids. This little thing over here is called glycerol. And so most of your dietary fat is in the form of triglycerides. When you just like have bacon or something like that and you can like see the fat, it's mostly triglyceride that you're eating. So your body breaks that down and it can use it for energy. You'll notice, by the way, that these are mostly chains of carbon chains. And when we talk about sugars in a second, you'll notice that sugars are also carbon chains. And that is because, the reason for that you can convert everything into fat is because if your body has too much of any of these carbon chains, it can just make them into these and store these in your fat cells. So if you have too much fat in your diet, you'll store it as fat. It's already fat. But if you have too much of this sugar, it will also store it as fat. It will just convert this into this and store it into your fat cells. So anytime you have too much of a carbon-based molecule in your blood, your body's always going to convert it into fat and store it. So there really is no advantage to one over the other. Some people used to think that this is a big thing in the 90s. People were buying low-fat everything. Oh, I want low-fat yogurt. You guys have heard this before? Oh, low-fat cream cheese or whatever. And then they in order to make it low-fat and still not taste like cardboard, they just increase the sugar. They just put more of this in to get rid of the other thing. But that's not how it works. Because if you put more of this in, it just converts it into this and stores it. So there's no advantage if you switch out fat for sugar. You don't get less in the end. So you end up getting the same number of calories. The total calories are the important part, not the format that you're eating it in.
But it's healthier to take on fat than sugar, isn't it?
That's what we're starting to realize now. That having more fat in your diet than sugar in your diet is probably more beneficial long term. The total calories are still important. If you're eating more calories than you're burning, you're going to gain weight. But you're right that it seems to be that if we have high sugar diets, high carbohydrate diets, that seems to be worse for you long term for your health than having a high fat diet. So yes, I'm not saying that all carbs are necessarily bad for you, but we certainly eat a very high carbohydrate rich diet in North America. It's very high, especially simple sugars, which we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, so that's fats. Again, mostly energy storage, a little bit for cell membranes. Carbohydrates, these are the carbs. Carbohydrates are just sugars. A carbohydrate, so what's the primary use for that? Why do you want to eat sugar? It tastes delicious. The reason it tastes delicious is, again, it's an evolutionary trait. It makes people want to eat it because it keeps us alive, because we need it to do what? Why does it taste so good? What do we need it for? This is going back to our monkey brain when we were ancient.
I know what it is. I just don't. I don't remember. I know what it is, but I don't remember.
Is it what, sorry? It is sweet, but there's a reason why it tastes good to us. We were like genetically programmed to enjoy the flavor of it because we need it for this.
I think y'all said it.
For what, sorry?
I know what it is. I just forget. You know?
It's very similar to fat. It's energy.
There you go, man.
It is our primary energy molecule, and it tastes delicious. It's really hard to think about this, but up until just the last couple hundred years, every winter, people died because they just didn't have enough food stored from the previous harvest. You know, like this was like a huge part of human history. You stored up as much as you could over the summer, and then you tried to store up some extra, and then if you ran out during the winter, you died. So getting lots of additional calories is what kept you alive as a human all the way up until very, very recently in human history. Now we have the exact opposite problem for most people in North America, which is that we have infinite access to calories. And so that is completely counterproductive for us to take on as many calories as possible. But you can see how it was beneficial for our survival very recently in our history, to just slam down the calories because it kept you alive. You wouldn't die during the winter. So there are reasons why it tastes so good, why humans are programmed to really go for this stuff. Anyway, in its most simplest form, sugars are found as what are called monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are simple sugar molecules like this one right here. This is called glucose. It's a 5-carbon chain that goes in a circle configuration here. And that's the simplest form of sugar is glucose. When plants are doing photosynthesis, they're making this. So this is the first thing that you build. This is very sweet when you consume glucose just by itself. This and fructose, which is the fruit version of this sugar. It only has one slight change in chemical bonds, but it's basically exactly the same as this. This is a simple sugar. It's only one sugar molecule all by itself. And when you take this in, your body doesn't have to break it down. It's just immediately accessible to your cells. Your cells can pull this sugar in right away. As soon as you eat it, it goes right into your blood sugar goes whoop, super high, and then your cells have access to a huge amount of sugar. So, I mean, more recently, we've learned it's problematic to have such a huge spike in your blood sugar because it's difficult for your body to deal with that continuously every time you consume lots of simple sugar. But we have a lot of this in our diet. Anything that has sugar added to it, breakfast cereals, well, there's lots of things that they add sugar to. Mostly they're adding just simple sugar. So these cause really high spikes in your blood sugar. You can take those simple sugars and put them together into disaccharides. A disaccharide is two of these linked together. So it's a slightly more complex sugar. And those are the types of sugars that are found in like grains and milk and things like that, and whole grains. Those are disaccharides. And also in those are starches that are made by plants. Starches are a polysaccharide. That's when you take a whole bunch of sugar molecules and you link them together in a big long chain. That's a polysaccharide. Poly just means many. Anytime you have many of a specific molecule linked together in a big long chain, we call that a polymer or a polymer. Great example of a polymer or a polymer is plastic. So a plastic is usually a single molecule, and then it's just you link 10,000 of them in a row, and then that's why it's like stretchy and stuff, because it's like a whole bunch of, it's like a grid of like a whole bunch of molecules stuck together. That's a polymer. So a lot of these biomolecules are found in polymers as well, polysaccharides. Starch is probably the best example of a polysaccharide. That's what you would find in plants. They like to store their sugars as a polysaccharide. So going back again here, it would be one of these, except linked to another one, and linked to another one, linked to another one, linked to another one. Those are also known as complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are interesting because when you eat them, your body has to break them down slowly before they are accessible in your blood. And so when you eat them, your blood sugar goes up very slowly because you have to break them down and it takes time. So you don't end up getting those big spikes in blood sugar, which is why the Canada's Food Guide recommends that you're eating whole grains instead of things like simple grains, like things that are highly processed. White flour and things like that have all of their starches broken down into single sugars, basically, and then they're baked. So they don't have very many complex carbohydrates left in them. Okay, so I already mentioned this here. They're called starch in plants. You also build a polymer of sugar in your muscles and in your liver. You take all those glucose molecules to store them. Your liver is the primary place where you store glucose, that and in your muscles. And you store that as glycogen. So glycogen is the name of the sugar that you keep in your muscles. By the way, all these really cool words like polymer and glycogen, monosaccharide, great words for your vocabulary list that you should really consider adding. This note is a gold mine. And we mentioned here that it's primarily an energy source. It is mostly for energy. We almost exclusively consume sugar for energy, although we do use the carbohydrates to build certain structures in cells as well, but that's a very secondary function. It's mostly energy. Okay, last two. These ones aren't quite as important. We don't need huge quantities of the very last one here, but water, it makes up the majority of your body mass. So it's a macronutrient because you need a ton of it every day. For these other two, sugar, carbohydrates, protein, and fat, you need grams of it a day, 100 grams, 200 grams of these a day. Water, you need kilograms a day. So you're not only getting it by drinking it, but you're also getting it in your food. So there is quite a bit of water that is just in food. Like if you eat an apple or something like that, like a lot of the apple is water. So you don't necessarily have to be like drinking 10 liters of water a day, but you get a lot through the food that you eat as well. So it's extremely important because it's where all of the chemical reactions in your body take place. Your cells are all filled with water, and they require that water in order to do all of their metabolic functions. If they don't have enough water, they don't work properly. If you get super dehydrated, your neurons in your brain don't work properly. Like things don't function properly on a cellular level if you don't have enough water. So it is extremely important, and you need large quantities of it every day. That's really all I have to say about water. You guys know what the molecule looks like, right? H2O, you would have talked about this in grade 10. You got your 2 hydrogens and your 1 oxygen. This looks familiar, yes? Okay. Last thing I'm going to mention here is the idea of nucleic acids. As I mentioned on Wednesday, we're going to talk about how proteins are built. You got to read that DNA. That's a big part of it. Nucleic acids have 3 components to them. A phosphate. In chemistry last year, do you guys remember what a phosphate is? Probably not. Does that sound familiar a little bit? So phosphate is PO4.
I think it's in the periodic table, whatever.
Phosphorus is.
Oh, phosphate.
It would have been on the other periodic table. You had the one that had the polyatomic ions. Did you guys talk about those in grade 10?
Yeah.
So it's one of the polyatomic ions, phosphate. So that's what the P stands for here. Okay, it's PO4. Oh, and I'm going to forget the charge on it. PO4, 3 minus, 2 minus, 1 minus?
3 minus.
Is it?
To be, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, PO4, 3 minus, that's phosphate. Okay, so you got a phosphate. Then you got one of those other things that we just looked at, a sugar. Okay? And then the last part here is a nitrogenous base. It's a completely different type of molecule. Okay, when you put those 3 together, you get one single block of nucleic acid. Okay? This forms a pattern because you can link it to another one, and then link it to another one, and then link it to another one. And those nitrogenous bases come in 4 different types: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Did you guys talk about this in grade 10? No. Okay, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail on Wednesday. There's 4 different types of those end units there, those nitrogenous bases. And because you can link them together like this, you can make a pattern. And your body, your cells, can read that pattern and use that pattern to build things. And that's how information is stored in your DNA. There's also another side to the ladder, this side over here, and it just sticks together to the pattern on the other side. It basically just makes it more sturdy so that it doesn't get chemically reacted or broken up. And then that thing gets twisted up into a big twisty molecule like this. This is called a double helix. It's the name of the shape. And then that's how your DNA is stored. So it's a big long chain of these repeating patterns over and over and over and over again. And that forms a code, that's your genetic code, that makes up all the information that's used to build you, basically. All the different parts of all of your cells, tells which ones to work and which ones to rest in all of your different types of cells. So that code is super important. Okay, so as I just mentioned here, it's a phosphate, a sugar, and a nitrogenous base. It's arranged in a double helix. Again, it's a number of units stuck together. That's called a polymer. And the name of these subunits, or this polymer, is called deoxyribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid is DNA. DNA is the short form for that. You need to take in these. You need to take in these parts as part of your diet. You have to take those in because you have to build new DNA. Every time that you make a new cell, you have to make a copy of its DNA so that your new cell has all the information that the previous cell had. You would have talked about that mitosis in grade 10. But in order to do that, no, maybe not, hopefully you did, but so you have to eat these, in other words. So these nucleic acids are part of your diet. You get them in everything. So anytime you consume a food that is made out of cells, which is almost everything that you're eating pretty much, you're getting nucleic acids as part of that food. So this is really as easy to consume as part of your diet. Unless you were like eating sugar cubes as your diet, you'd be getting nucleic acids pretty much all the time. So, and you don't need huge quantities of these every day, but you do need to take some in. Okay, it contains all the genetic information. And we're going to do a whole unit on genetics. So I'm not going to go into super detail about this stuff now. We're really going to get into the genetic stuff later. So Okay, so again, we've got our proteins, fats, carbohydrates. Those are what are typically known as your macros. You got water, which you need in very large quantities for to do chemical reactions, and then you got your nucleic acids for your genetic information. And those are the really key large biological molecules that your cells are made out of and used to communicate with each other. There are a number of smaller molecules. Obviously, this isn't like a full list, but these are the really important ones, the macromolecules that do the vast majority of the functioning within your cells, which is kind of cool. Okay, that was pretty long, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. And yes, that's true, Theo. So you do have a little bit of time to use the water up in your system. You get about 3 days before you potentially, where you can't survive any longer. Yes?
What did you say the definition of the polymer was?
It's a number of molecules linked together in a big long chain. So once you put them in a long chain, that's a polymer. Poly just means many. Okay, so what are you guys going to do with this information? So first, don't forget to save that, by the way, if you took that note with me. I think the default is to save it into a folder, like a CAMI folder or something in your Google Drive. But you can move those files into the folder through the save function, like into your cellular biology folder. I would probably recommend putting them in there so they don't get confused with other stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do on your own now is watch this video. Okay, this is a little bit of a summary of the macromolecules. It talks about a couple little things that I didn't mention in the note. Okay, it's fairly short. I think it's like 7 minutes long. There's a reading from your textbook, page 6 to 17. Okay, and then it's questions 1 to 4 on page 20. Realistically, guys, it's 12:25. We're not going to get further than that today. I completely get that, okay? If you're not done that by the end of the 12:50, I would consider doing up to questions number 1 to 4 on page 20 during learning block 3. Okay, that would be a good thing for you to complete during learning block 3. There is also a lab activity. Some of you started it this morning because you're a little bit ahead, which is awesome, but I am going to give you learning block 1 tomorrow to work on that. Okay, I'll even move it. I'll move it on here so that you can see it. I'll put it into learning block 1 for tomorrow. But yeah, if you've already started that, feel free to do it, but you don't have to have that done for tomorrow. Okay, it's quite long. And I'm not going to put that on you. So any questions about this before we move on for people at home or for you guys?
I have a question about this.
Okay, I'll get to you in 1 second then. Yes?
So it's just the learning block 3 questions and follow-up that we do at home today?
No, the learning block 3 questions and follow-up. Oh, I should mention this to the people at home too. Brody, I can help you with that in 1 second. That is just a link to the virtual classroom, which I hope is going to work during learning block 3. I'll leave it open here, and if people have questions, you can drop in anytime and ask a question. What I meant was the last part on here where it says to make a copy of this Google Doc, go to Explore Learning, do this. That was supposed to be during learning block 2 today, but there's no chance. I don't think people are going to get that done. So we're actually going to do that tomorrow during learning block 1.
So what do we do at home today?
So the stuff above it here. So you're going to watch this little video. You're going to read page 6 to 17 in your textbook. I say consider adding at least 5 words while you're reading to your vocabulary list. And then it's questions number 1 to 4 on page 20. You should just do them in a Google Doc.
In a Google Doc?
Yeah.
And do we send it to you?
What's that? You don't need to send that one to me.
Okay.
I am going to check it. I'm going to just come around and check. So you can just throw it up tomorrow. I'm just going to come around and check to see if you've done the homework, okay? The last part here, though, the Explore Learning thing, yeah, tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. Yep.
I can do it at any time tonight, right?
Do what at any time?
Homework.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good.
Wait, I have a question about the
All right, is that about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to say for you guys at home, Brody, I'm gonna call down there in a second, and then we'll get the lab thing worked out. If you need anything, send me an email. But other than that, I'm gonna close the stream for now. And if you're looking to ask questions, you can send me an email or during Learning Block 3, there's a link at the very bottom here. You can just go to that virtual classroom. I'll be there for the entire Learning Block 3. You could just drop in and ask questions. Okay? All right, and I will talk to you guys then shortly.